Hello, everyone, and welcome to Cut and Splice. This is Matt.
This is Jason.
And this is Gil.
So, this time around, we are discussing Robert Eggers' film, The Northman. This is another installment from the same director who made The Witch and The Lighthouse. It follows the story of Hamlet, and if it sounds similar to Hamlet, there's a reason. It's actually based off of an old, I guess, Norse tale that actually inspired Shakespeare's Hamlet. It's hard, if you know Hamlet, to not see the parallels in this movie, but it's a much
Extreme
more
parallels.
Yeah, still a much more visceral and brutal interpretation of the tale.
Hamlet didn't have any intestines.
Yeah, all he did, they just stayed inside his body.
Yes.
Yeah, the OG Hamlet.
Yeah, but anyway, I sung this movie's praises when it came out last year, and I guess I'll throw it out to the guys to kind of voice their opinions.
Yeah, I mostly I saw that it came up for streaming, and because I didn't get a chance to see it in theaters, that would be a good opportunity to see it. And and just because Matt felt so strongly about it, and because Robert, right? Robert Eggers.
Yeah.
I keep calling him David or something on our show. He is an interesting director, and I think beyond just talking about the movie, we can just talk about him and sort of like what he's done this far and where we think he's going. One of those interesting younger, up and coming. Yeah. As far as I like the movie. Like my reaction to it, I think it's definitely got good touches in it. It would be a tough recommend. Like you would have to think about I don't think this movie is for everybody. If I know that when it came out that there was this disappointment that it didn't make a lot of box office ticket selling, because people expected that if they sort of sell it as an action movie of sorts, that it would play that way, but obviously it's not, and the word of mouth will very quickly dim that down, even if the marketing was trying to sell it that way. But I did hear recently that through streaming and video that it's already sort of made its money back or something, that it's doing better, and that sort of makes sense, because I do feel like sometimes people are just one step away from seeing it in theaters, but then maybe they'll give it a chance if it's on streaming. So some of these movies, unfortunately, just have to go through that process to really earn an audience, I feel like.
I was really excited to see this movie. I I haven't really seen a lot of Eggers' work. I might have only seen one of them, I think. I'm not sure. I'll have to check in a minute. But Matt recommended this very highly, and the trailer looked pretty good. And basically, when he said it was going to be a really good movie and I should check it out, and then he basically told me that I don't remember how much we talked about it. Not much, really, but just the fact that Anya Taylor-Joy was in it, and the fact that it's a Viking movie with Alexander Skarsgård. That was enough for me to want to see it pretty badly, because like he's basically he's bored to play this role. And I even commented about how funny it was that the movie's called The Northman, because aside from his pretty good Tarzan movie that's really overlooked, I would say one of his more popular known for things is that this guy really jumped on the scene as playing a 700 or 800-year-old, or maybe even 1,000-year-old Viking vampire in the movie or in the show True Blood named Eric Northman. So when when Matt told me that it was who was going to be in the movie, I was like, yeah, I got to go check that out. That's awesome. And I wasn't disappointed. It was, I think it's maybe not the best movie I saw all year, but I really liked it. I definitely agree with Gil that I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. Just like, you got to go see this, because there's a number of things, like it's brutality in certain moments, and I wouldn't recommend it to someone if they were just looking for an action movie, because it's got great action in it, but it's got more to it than that. But it's also got moments that kind of slow down a lot, that are very much not like your traditional action movie, and it could be a turn off for some people. But it's I was overall very pleased with it.
Yeah, and just like with Eggers' previous films, the dialogue can be difficult for people to get invested in, because it just like The Lighthouse and The Witch, it's it sounds very old timey, and it's spoken with a very heavy vernacular, and so it isn't as casual as most films that you get nowadays. But that's also something that I think is rather rather appealing for me, at least when it comes to Eggers' films. I've always kind of enjoyed how his choice and how to handle dialogue really contributes to the atmosphere of all of his films so far. So yeah, but yeah, that is definitely a factor that can be hard for a lot of moviegoers.
Yeah, and it's definitely in line. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, are those the only 3 movies he's made so far?
Those are his 3 features. He's made a couple of shorts.
Yeah, that's all I was asking. It's just his features. Okay. Then I've seen this one and the Lighthouse. I have still not seen The Witch yet.
Yeah. Another very good movie. I would recommend it.
I very much plan to see it. I just, in fact, I don't really have much of an excuse, because there was probably a 6-month period where it was sitting there on my queue, and I just never got around to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe that's a good approach to rate this movie too. Is discuss his other 2. I did watch The Witch not too long ago. I'm not sure if I saw it before or after I saw The Lighthouse. It might have been after.
Spoilers. No spoilers.
No spoilers. Yeah. No spoilers. But no, the Witch is I thought it was good. The thing is, I guess he started out as a production designer. He's really into design, and he's really into creating these worlds in a very authentic way. I feel like almost too much, like to a fault, at times, and then he kind of loses track of that there's a story to be told. And I think The Witch is okay. It's interesting. I like the way it comes around, which is sort of like the way I like this movie ends up coming around. So he doesn't, the end comes back to tie his story in a bow, but it's, as the movie is going, I don't feel that he's very good with tension. And maybe it's the dialogue being a bit distant. I felt like in The Lighthouse too, even though it was very engaging imagery and very engaging characters, I just felt a bit distant. Like, it just felt like it was all just a play being put for me in the space, but I didn't feel as involved in it. And that's okay. You can do that well. Kubrick was kind of like that. Just sort of presenting the action, but the way he showed it had so much tension, and it was so engaging, and especially in his better work, that you can't even compare the 2. So yeah, and I think that the Lighthouse is the same way, and then this movie, unfortunately, is the same way, and it's a pattern that I see. And next up, I guess he's doing Nosferatu, which is yeah, it's interesting. It's
Interesting.
yeah, to go for like it's kind of like I don't know why that to me it reminds me of Barry Jenkins all of a sudden deciding to do a like a prequel of Lion King or something. I don't know what he's doing, but it's just weird that like these like new auteurs come on the scene. Is like, well, what's going to be your next movie? It's like, well, I'm going to do a remake, you know, or a prequel or something. Yeah, it's an odd choice, but it's kind of cool. Like to see someone who's got all the creative freedom in the world and they decide to take something that's been done and kind of put their stamp on it. So maybe that'll be something different and interesting. If I'm not mistaken, The Lighthouse was very, very similar to a foreign film. That was they just really changed up the entire setup and that period of time that it's happening. So it's a very, very different movie. But I think there was a movie that before it, a few years earlier, that that was very similar. So that was also a borderline adaptation, but nothing like Nosferatu. But in any case, so that's I think my verdict about all his movies is that they're half baked for me. I really like what he's doing. I'm happy he's out there. I think we brought that up about the young guns, you know, of Hollywood. Like, but and I definitely see the talent there. And it's not only like this movie. I was looking for it because I know he's got the design down and the brutality down. But I also saw that he had like some nice touches here, where the way he was moving the camera and really trying to connect between objects in the frame as he was moving it. You know, maybe you watched some Spielberg films and but didn't go all the way. You know, just a lot of tracking shots and things that were fairly interesting. Really trying to make it cinematic. But still, I don't know why it's not a home run for me. But I definitely appreciate it. I definitely think that it's this movie could have been much worse in many different hands.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I like the fact that he was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do this movie, so I'm not gonna base it on Hamlet. I'm gonna go to the original source material, and it'll be something a little different. Um, yeah. So as far as like rating it, it's tough. I almost can't make a decision. I do think for me it's around the 7 because there's nothing about it that completely pops out. Even though I very much appreciate it, so it's a very warm 7, maybe like a 7.5. But I think that's where it needs to stay for me, at least at the moment.
Okay, Jason.
Yeah. Well, I like I said, I've never seen The Witch. Can't compare it to that really. Um, for any of our longtime listeners, you may recall me talking about my experience watching The Lighthouse, particularly this particular scene in that. But I had pretty strong reactions to that movie, positive and negative. But yeah, I enjoyed this movie quite a bit more than The Lighthouse, simply because it's not so difficult to get through, but and just more enjoyable to watch. But I don't think it's got some issues, but I do like it a lot more. I'd probably put it at like maybe a soft 8 or something like that, just because there if this movie was as great all the way through as I felt it was in its strongest scenes, I would feel like it was like a masterpiece, incredible, whatever movie. As it is, I really liked a lot of it. And, as with most movies, it's just not, it's just not quite a masterpiece. It's got a few issues here and there. And, I would just kind of say it's not quite um, uh, as great as some of its scenes. But yeah, it's just Viking Hamlet pretty much, and in all the good ways that you'd expect that to be.
All right. Well, I think I'm going to go a bit higher. I'm dancing around an 8.5 for where I would put this. I mean, honestly, I'll get into it a little bit more. It's not really a spoiler thing, but no matter how much I love Nicole Kidman, I think that she was actually one of the weaker links in the film.
Really?
Yeah, but aside from that, I mean, the performances are strong all around. It looks gorgeous. I mean, both from a cinematography perspective and from a production design perspective, it's big, it's bold, it's ambitious, and I mean, it's a new take on a classic story. So I really appreciated it. So yeah. So I guess with that we can move into spoilers.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess Jason, I would be interested to know what's some of the points that you think are maybe not as strong as others or weaken the film.
So for me, it's I will address that, and I'll tell you. But it just to throw this out there, it's easier to talk about the stuff that I thought was really really good, and then how other parts kind of dragged down from that. But to address what you just said more directly, there's a couple of things, and it's not. I just want to stress this because I really liked this movie. It's just these things are almost like they almost irritate me because I think without them the movie would be so much more solid. But so kind of from like a pacing standpoint, I don't even know if pacing is the right term because it felt like it was pretty well paced in terms of how the movie moved. It's almost like a storytelling issue in a way because the first battle is so good. The one that we not the one we see with him as an adult, where the time changes and it's actually Tarzan. It's Alexander Skarsgård, and he and these other berserker guys like attack this wooden fortress and stuff. It's an incredible scene. I loved it. I that after that scene. Which I'd like to talk about more later. I mean, you see this guy is so they establish how incredible this guy is. I mean, he is something. I mean, he's working as a mercenary amongst other berserkers to like take down stuff for people who are paying them, basically, you know, to take out powerful people and stuff. I mean, he's so good. And I mean, in this scene, he is attacking these people defending this fort who are like, they look like they're a foot shorter than him. And he's just striking them, sometimes even on their shields and stuff like that. And it's like they're just going down because he's so powerful. And it looks like he should be that powerful compared to them. And it's like, then I get that the movie's going to shift gears. That's fine. It's after that point, he kind of speaks to this holy woman thing and kind of gets like a prophecy sort of thing and kind of redirects his energy back towards where it should be, which is revenge. And the whole trajectory of the film changes, which is great, and kind of goes into a sneaky mode because he like has to sneak his way back to where the people he needs to kill are. And so the whole movie starts moving in that direction, which is fine. But then he's got to very understandably fulfill the destiny and get himself this crazy good sword that's going to allow him to attain victory. And I get that there's a lot of troops around him and people guarding him at all times and whatever, and watching him. But you know, I mean, he goes and there's this epic scene where he has to do things to achieve stuff to get the sword. So all of that works. But you know, from the moment he gets that sword, we still got what would you guys guess? An hour still in the movie?
I
I don't know.
think so.
It's about that. There's a lot of story still after that moment when he gets that sword. He comes back to the village and he's got that sword and he hides the thing away And I get it. Part of it was because they, like the thing said, I really liked this aspect. There's kind of a mythical sword thing, and he can't use it in the daytime, which is interesting, but whatever. But really, other than that first day, now he's in the village. The bad guys are there. The people he needs to kill are there. He's got the sword. And based on what I've seen, not a single one of these damn chumps can stand up to this guy. They shouldn't stand a damn chance against him. I feel like he's got what he needs to just achieve victory at this point. And this movie drags on for like another hour after that. Now, granted, there's also a really great thing that I really loved. Maybe Matt didn't, or maybe this wasn't his issue. I don't know. But there's a twist with Nicole Kidman that I loved. I did not see it coming, and I liked that a lot. I thought that was good story and everything like that. But really, I just felt it was odd that from that point on, we've still got like an hour, and a good portion of that hour, like a good 30 minutes of it at least, is like him kind of sneaking around and kind of killing one or two people at a time. And I'm like, this guy is more than capable. He has got what he needs. Like, let's chop. Let's get to it, you know? That was one issue I had. It's also just, I don't know. Obviously, we're in the spoiler section, so this isn't a problem. But just to kind of cut to the big ending thing. So, you know, he there's two moments in the movie where he speaks to holy people. You know, magical people. You know, there's the woman with those little seashell things on making it look like she has three eyes, you know, in that little temple thing that's burned up.
Soothsayer. Bjork.
Sure.
The one played by Bjork.
Oh, is it played by Bjork? Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that. Yeah. So there's Bjork, and there's when he goes to talk to the new crazy man in the village who's got the head of Willem Dafoe's character, who's basically Rafiki. And I was like, okay, so in both these cases, they foretell things, and they do. I actually really liked one of the positive things about this movie is that for a lot of movies that foretell destiny and stuff like that, it feels very ham-fisted when it pays off. And this movie, I felt that two or three things that they really hammer home as like, oh, this is going to happen. And they warn him about stuff, you know, oh, you're going to have to choose. You're going to have to make a choice between your vengeance and your loved ones or something like that. And I'm like, And I like the ending. I like what they do with it there. But I don't know about you guys. This is kind of a ham sandwich thing. But the ending was a little odd to me because even though I really liked it, you know, Nala is basically sailing away with two twins in her belly, you know, and you know, Simba goes off to kill Scar, and you got the thing.
That's why I got confused there. Isn't her name Olga? It was like you started with the Lion King.
Yeah. So they're all the same characters. It's okay.
Yeah.
And so like, it's cool because it's like he says he's got to do it because he's going to hunt them to the end of the earth or whatever. And I get it. I love the story. I love it. But her going off with the twins in her belly there's literally a line of dialogue where he says, get to this one place because I have some friends there. Basically, like, they'll be able to help you, and then I'll meet you there, kind of thing. I mean, it's supposed to be kind of a nice ending because it's like, because of how it ends, she's supposed to basically carry on his little dynasty, his little legacy, you know, and everything like that. They even use those words at one point. And I'm like, if we had developed something where he had friends, you know, or something like that, a really close bond. We don't get a Timon and Pumbaa in this. We don't, you know. It's like we don't see him even being close to anybody.
No C-3PO and R2-D2.
Yeah. Which is fine. I don't think that was a problem with the movie, except that they expect us to feel a certain way about her, a victorious kind of way about her going off, bittersweet, but still victorious in that he has now spread his seed, and they're going to have their tree lineage dynasty thing will continue. But it's like in this brutal ass world that they have given us, I see, and not to mention a brutal ass world that very realistically depicts how close people safeguard their bloodlines and things like that. She's a very smart and resourceful woman, but I don't see how she's gonna just go off, even if he happens to have some friends that are, that are good friends of his or something like that, which we saw no evidence of. I don't understand how she's expected to raise these two kids into like, the royalty that they are and continue some sort of family lineage and dynasty. She'll be lucky if they survive at all, or if she survives at all. I mean, what does she have to offer somebody if she's already got somebody else's kids in this primitive world that they live in? I'm not trying to say that women don't have value outside of bearing children, but back then, you saw how brutally these people react towards bloodlines. And his father literally wanted him dead just to prevent another lineage, another like anyone but his sons from succeeding and stuff like that. I just see in this world that this movie gives us very little hope for her, even though the movie seems to be telling us that it's like there's no problem, we're all good.
It is one of the few issues, is the way it wraps up, and then maybe it leads into things that I like about it. I mean, you touch on all these things. For one thing, I would say maybe an issue with his movies is a lack of humor. They're a bit too serious. I feel like The Lighthouse was trying to be a bit more, finding that humor within it, but still, it's just very gloomy. So I think that's part of the issue, because life is funny. Life is humorous, and this whole thing plays like a comedy of errors. You have these kings and queens and princes, and you're like, over what? These like patches of land that are so insignificant. And it's just a joke. Like, they make such a big fuss over close to nothing. If you compare what they control and the wealth that they had, compare with like what Jeff Bezos has today, it's just like you can't even, like, they're like ants on a pile of sand. It's really like that's the one thing I like about the movie, is that to some degree it just shows the insignificance of it all. Is that we put so much like emphasis on like hell and heaven and this and that. It's one of the things that bothered me about the end, is the fact that they do show an image of him riding towards the gates of heaven or something. And the whole thing with the lineage, the montages with the lineage of the trees and stuff. To me, a better ending to this movie, I guess it's his imagination, so maybe you can go along with it. But to me, what would make sense is that he's got this very romantic notion about, like, I can have it all. I can have my vengeance for my father, and my kids will live on and will be kings, which I don't know how the fuck they will be, because nobody knows who they are and what land do they have to claim. But that even though he gets the vengeance, he dies an empty death, and he never gets to see his sons grow up or to be with his wife. Like, it's a shitty ending. Like, but if it's of its own making, it's sort of tragic, sort of like Hamlet. Like, it's tragic. It's like you're so caught up in this idea of vengeance that you forgot to live, that you forgot that the point of all this is to live. But that's not the ending that we get. I don't feel like, because if he ends on some glorious, like, climax of like, I got what I wanted and here I am, I'm not gonna go to hell like everybody said, I'm gonna go to heaven because I did the right thing and I've protected my lineage, then it just feels like the movie is almost condoning that viewpoint, which to me just is kind of meh. Like, it's not very profound. It's, to me, what's profound about the movie is that these people are nothing. They're just like a bunch of humans a while back that were bickering amongst themselves and are completely insignificant. And the most interesting thing about them is their lives, the way they lived. And that's the cool stuff about the movies. He's got the thing with, around the fire, that like he goes really deep into the rituals and showing what it was like to be a human back then, and the type of how they spend their evenings, beyond just the story oriented action. Like that stuff I like. But in the end, just show that, wow, this is all just meaningless. It's all kind of cool and it's nice, and this is probably what humans were like hundreds or sometimes thousands of years ago. But it's just like, what is it, like tears in the rain thing? It's just like it's just gonna disappear, and most of us wouldn't even. I guess these stories bring those humans, these souls back to life. But that's really their only significance is in our minds. Other than that, like they have so little significance. Anyway, so I think it's a mix for me of the things that were good and not so great about the movie. But that's been my overall experience. And I like the touches. I like the fact that the Nicole Kidman character like flips on him and tells him that his dad was a nobody. And you kind of feel like maybe his dad was the asshole all along, and he set him on this path that's completely fruitless. Like that's the movie. That's an interesting movie. If the dad was the shithead all along, but he had this romantic notion of him, and in the end, it's like, oh my God, my dad fucked me. He fucked my entire life. And he gets it like right then and there, right before the end. He realizes that. Like, he doesn't want to admit it. He doesn't want to believe it because he was a king. He was like the best of men, and I can be too, and all this romantic notions. But in the end, you're like, no, this was all just bullshit. Like, this whole life was just one big pile of bullshit. I don't know. To me, that's a great movie, but I don't know if that's what we got, or at least, what do you think, Matt? What's been, your reaction to it?
Oh, and I definitely see what you're saying. And the funny thing is, when you talk about the ending, it is one of those things where I think there's like almost a almost a visual representation of the end of Hamlet, whereas you know, even though there isn't, I mean, well, obviously Hamlet was written for the stage, so there wasn't any like grandiose image of him, flying to heaven. Although the Greeks did do some Deus Ex Machina crap. I mean, that's where the term Deus Ex Machina comes from. But um, I, like, as Hamlet's dying at the end of Hamlet, he's telling Horatio to stave off death, don't drink the poison, I need you to tell my story, as if there were something, there is something significant about Hamlet and his revenge story, and how he died in his pursuit. Still, in the same way, though, Hamlet was dying with the understanding that everybody knew that he was still Prince of Denmark, even though the entire kingdom was falling. And the last lines from Hamlet are when Fortinbras says, "Go bid the soldiers shoot," uh, in in honor of Hamlet and what he stood for and everything like that. So there is kind of that same approach at the end of Hamlet as there is to the end of the Northman. But yeah, I think that Hamlet might have done it better, even though actually a lot of adaptations of Hamlet even cut Fortinbras out entirely, and you never get that ending. But
definitely don't get it in the Lion King.
No. They, and also since they cut out Fortinbras in so many adaptations, you also lose the Act 4, Scene 4 soliloquy that comes before Hamlet is shipped off to England and before he makes his return. And one of the things that I find interesting about the Northman is that like the extended portion of the story is really like what Shakespeare left out. uh, of Hamlet's story and that buffer between Act 4, Scene 4 and the end of Act 5, Scene 1. Uh, but okay, I'm getting too much into Hamlet now. But but
Which
like
was obviously to be expected.
yeah. But I mean, like, I really do appreciate like that shift where, like, not only does his mother reveal that, it wasn't even that no, this isn't like Gertrude where she, was just a weak, fickle woman and everything, and her husband died and she just wanted to, like, hop on the uncle because that creates stability and everything like that. No, she was actually part of the decision to overthrow the kingdom. She was part of the decision to have her husband assassinated, and she's really kind of a terrible person to her own flesh and blood son. uh, as she's revealing that to him, and I think that that's actually a strong element, a really strong twist in the film where, like, is that going to challenge his worldview enough to deter him? Uh, when I was talking about Nicole Kidman earlier, I mean, honestly, I just think I mean, I'm not an expert on those accents from that region of the world, but it just felt like she was, like, among the cast, she was the one forcing the accent more than anybody else. Like it
Mm.
just hadn't settled with her, and she was just kind of I don't know. It just kind of rung to me like I don't know. It just didn't sound right, and it just seemed like she was saying the lines and really thinking about how she was saying them while she was saying them, rather than just speaking naturally.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think her character, and I think that the way that they handled that aspect of the film was actually one of the strongest aspects of the actual story.
Let me ask you guys something real
Yeah.
quick about that.
Okay.
Because I think that turn was really great with her and everything, but I didn't think about this till after the movie, and probably like sometime yesterday when I was just kind of like thinking about it and everything. But does it seem odd to anyone else, like, what their plan was? Because at the end she reveals that, that it was basically her idea to assassinate the king. And then she says to him that it was the uncle's idea to kill the boy, to prevent any future problems or something like that, succession problems and infighting and things like that. And she says, and to that point, I agreed. Meaning it wasn't her idea to kill him, but she was okay with it happening, which is
Yeah.
cold thing to say to somebody. But I just wonder, I mean, it seems like such a rash plan. I mean, you're talking about, and real quickly, I just want to say they do a really good job hiding the lead, because you've got the scene where the long tracking shot following the boy sneaking through the village, not being seen, and he's witnessing his mom being carried off. And sounds like she's screaming, and she reveals to him later that she was laughing or something like that. And then there's also the one other scene that buries the lead, is the one I'm trying to address here, is that when they're done with their celebration, Ethan Hawke, Mufasa, comes and talks to her alone and takes his shirt off for the first time since he's come back. And they're like kind of like taking care of a wound that he has, an abdominal wound, pretty bad looking one. And he tells her pretty flat out, he says, look, and he kind of reveals it to her. And he says, I've got a little bit of time. I'm not going to make it, but I've got enough time to prepare the boy. He feels that there's something very important. He's got to do this ritual thing to basically take his son and turn him from a boy into a man, kind of thing. And not talking about anything sexual. He's just got to make him grow up, toughen him up and do a little ritual, spiritual thing with Rafiki and stuff like that. Anyway, point is that when he says this to her, she looks at his wound and she looks very concerned. And she says to him, like, hey, look, you're dying. Like, come spend time with me. Spend time with your queen, like, one more time. Let's, let you relax and get your strength back and whatever. And I don't know, she kind of implies they're going to go to bed or something like that. And he just kind of holds his hand up and is like, no, I need to prepare the boy. And then that's the last time we see her until, she's being carried off and the whole thing has gone on. And she reveals to him that their plan was, let's kill him and then the boy, and then you'll be king and everything will be good. I mean, doesn't it seem so much less reckless to just let the king die? Like, he's probably days from death, like, let him die. And then in the transitional period over the next year, when the son is being groomed to become the new king, he seems like the queen and the son have a totally normal relationship with the uncle. Like, they don't distrust him. Nobody seems to think that he's a bad guy or anything. Obviously, he'd be around as a friend and advisor and helper to help this young boy grow into a king. You're gonna have plenty of opportunities to off this kid, like, and then obviously the brother would be the next one in line. Like, why murder the king? He's about to die any day now.
Yeah. It's I guess that was part of, like, his followers, right? Of the brother. They had to have this moment where he killed
victory.
The king. So
I that could be it, I guess. It was a thing that just came to me like a ham sandwich. I was like, I want to see what you guys think about that.
Well, I mean, I actually think that one of the things that we're kind of that we haven't really talked about that I think is actually something that we shouldn't have to talk about, but I'm glad there's an end for this, which is it is an old story. I mean, this is a story that's 500 years older than Hamlet. It's been around forever, and one of the things that I really appreciate about this movie, just like what I appreciated about The Green Knight, is that it's a non-judgmental telling of a story that's 1,000 years old or more. It's this isn't the Rings of Power where they've been telling us for the last several months that we're repurposing Tolkien for a 21st century audience. No, fuck you. No, that's not how this is supposed to work. I mean, you're at least supposed to respect the source material, and I mean, this would not be a good movie if they're telling a story that just predates the Icelandic Commonwealth by 30, 40 years, and which was an honor culture, which was a culture that kind of resembles the Klingons in that you need to die by the sword in battle and in glory and in bravery, and that you need to keep your vows as the son and as the father, and you no matter what it is, if you vow to do this, you must do it. And Hamlet did vow to his father that whoever kills him, he would take up the sword and avenge his father's death. And it is that honor culture. It is that culture of you stand by your word no matter what. And it is a very non-judgmental retelling of that story. I never got a feeling that Robert Eggers was sitting there and trying to say, like, well, look at how far we've come. Or something, isn't it so good that this culture has died and now we're moving on and we're better now, and and by the way, fuck Hamnet, like, no, just you know, I mean, I think that you know, I think that there's something to be respected there. That he told the story, and with a certain reverence for the source material in the past and everything like that. So yeah,
Maybe that's what it is that he's infatuated with the details and to be honest about the material and being accurate. And like I said, the rituals to show that and length to expose us to it. And that's part of what movies are supposed to be. They're supposed to transport us to this different place, different time. I respect all that.
yeah,
But we are still telling a story in the context. Most period pieces tend to be about the present in some ways.
Yeah.
And you could always find a way to connect. Hamlet is always very current when you think about the story. I mean, politics and everything. You can find the correlating things very easily, but it
Unfaithful
doesn't.
spouses.
Yeah, stuff like that. But it just doesn't feel like he's extending it at all. Like it feels like it doesn't. He doesn't necessarily have to make a comment about it, but you could say something on the scope of just, again, going back to Kubrick, just humanity as a whole. Like it doesn't have to be that what they did was wrong. It's just to say that this is the way it was. It was brutal, and it was sad. Almost. That's
Mhm.
why where the humor would have come in. It's just that it's very sad. I think Hamlet is the same way. Is that there's the tragedy is just that it's really silly. Like I was kind of waiting for the to be or not to be moment here, right?
Mhm.
Because you feel like this guy is going through all this trouble, and it's so brutal and so like exhausting, and you just wonder sometime, like, where's that moment where he's gonna say, like, am I really doing the right thing? Is this all worth it? Like, maybe none of this makes any sense. Like, the moment of questioning your existence. That's why that line is so famous, because Hamlet is like,
The
shit.
undiscovered country.
I don't know if I want to keep going. Like, it just,
Yeah.
you start thinking about, the poster for this movie is Conquer Your Faith. That's an oxymoron. I mean, that's, you don't conquer your fate. You basically meet it where it's going to end. Whatever path has been
Yeah.
set for you, it's it. You don't have to conquer it. Maybe give in to your fate, because that's basically what it is. Um, and this guy is not doing anything to divert from that in any way.
Well, he
So
almost does.
he almost, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Actually, that is a good point. I mean, that tagline is really dumb. I gotta believe that
As
was the
many
studio.
taglines are.
Yeah, I gotta believe that was the studio and not Robert Eggers or anything like that. But but the thing is, like, there is something Shakespearean about the whole fatalism thing, and whether or not you're uh well, I mean, the whole concept of predestination, like in Macbeth, with the three hags foretelling, Macbeth that he wouldn't be conquered by any man born of woman, or and that the forest would converge and so on and so forth, and all these things seem like, oh, there's no way that that's going to happen. And then suddenly he sees the forest is converging, and it turns out that
The
Macbeth,
person who kills him was
Banquo, yeah,
born by a
uh,
C-section.
yeah, um, yeah. I get a couple of characters in that play screwed up more than I do in Hamlet, but at the same time, like the Hamlet story really does. I mean, the ghosts and the supernatural elements in uh, the Hamlet story are mostly retrospective, and Hamlet isn't told by his father to avenge him until after his father is already dead, and uh, appears to have in Act One. But whereas. But the thing is, the supernatural characters in the Northman are kind of similar to Hamlet, only in the Northman, Hamlet really does just believe that he's fated to get there. I mean, I mean, maybe I missed something with Bjork scenes or something, but it, maybe it was more of a hybrid between like the Macbeth witches and the Hamlet ghosts, where there was a little bit more of a you know this will all happen, in the way that is predestined. It is just funny, the liberties and the differences, even though, again, everybody knows that this is, well, everybody who's literate knows that this is the Hamlet story, just told differently. And it is just amazing how many key differences there are in the approach, not just in making it a more brutal movie in a different region, slightly different region of the world. I mean, it's uh, and but just in those storytelling elements and how they actually tried to bring it to the screen. And I think I've ranted for too long, and I'm probably bordering on rambling, so I'm going to stop talking now.
I wanted to say one more critical thing, and then the rest of the stuff I had to say were pretty much positive things. I love Anya Taylor-Joy in general, and I think she's one of the most like the talents to look for right now in movies for sure.
Yeah.
And in this movie is no exception. She's very good. But I just thought it was a little odd that the first real conversation she has with him is when they're both captives and they're being marched long ways across land. So they get a few moments where there's not any guards around them. So they're having a quick little conversation, and she knows he's there for vengeance because of some little brief half conversations they've had. But they really start talking, and she says to him something to the effect of, "Let me help you." And he kind of agrees. And she says to him, you're very powerful and you can break men's bones with your arms," or something like that. And she says, "I can break men's minds," or something like that. And I like her character. I have nothing against anything they did in this movie. It's just odd to me that you keep that line in there, because even though she's a very good helper to him in various ways, and she really changes up the story in that they end up having their feelings for each other really affect the rest of the movie in a big way, their actions and everything going forward. But there isn't really any moment where she does anything really particularly cunning.
Right.
So
That's true. Yeah, she should
yeah.
have been a bit more manipulative.
Or just
Yeah.
don't,
Because
or
that
just
would be
cut
the
that
strength
line.
of a woman in that time, is that she would be very
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
and she was very good. She was a very strong character in every way. It's just such a very specific line that is used at a very crucial time where we're just getting to know her, and then it doesn't really pay off in any way. So
Yeah, that's actually, now that you bring that up, I kind of hope that there's like a 3.5 hour long director's cut out there where there's
yeah,
like a whole story involving her.
that would be cool.
Yeah, I was just seeing in the trivia that he did say that he was mostly happy with the finished project, Eggers, but that he did make some studio cuts. That it was one of the most painful experiences, and he said like it would be very tough for him to commit to make another big movie like this. He wants to, and he wants to make it an even bigger one, but he said it only if he had full control, because it was just very tough. But I don't know. It's tough. These big movies are tough. That's why I mean, I'm glad he got to make it, and I'm sure we got something close to what the idea was. But I really hope. To me, the pacing was already slow, so I think adding more to it might have detracted. But at the same time,
Hard to say.
hard to say. Like the relationship between them is interesting. Maybe something was lacking there, because he's got this moment where he says how he appreciates her. Like for the first time, he connected with another human being on like a very personal level, which is usually what happens with love and
Yeah.
all that. And And to me, then it goes back to the movie that I was playing in my head, that it's like this guy is going to avenge his father, who might have been an asshole himself, and you're like, yeah, you're saying like, fuck that shit, dude. Like you got like a really nice woman here, she wants to be with you,
More than
and
nice.
yeah, more than nice, and she's also smart and capable and be a great partner. Just go off and have that. And obviously that would be a bad movie. He needs to fail to
Yeah.
see that. He needs to fail to see that. But to me, that was the movie. The movie was that like he's comprehend, this is so great. I have this person and I've connected. And it's not just a bunch of dudes in the forest acting like wolves. This is like an actual real thing that I can build something from. And then it's like, but I'm gonna go die trying to like defend my dad's honor. Like to me, that's a great movie in the context of what this is. But yeah, but then I feel like they got diverged there. Like the whole thing with that that ancient like soccer game, whatever they were
It's like
playing.
field hockey.
Yeah, and then there was like a thing with like when they do catch him, but they don't kill him because he's hidden the son's heart. And it's like, why not kill him? Like, then somehow he gets away with her help. I felt like all that stuff was a bit too much. Like it's like you said, Jason. Like he is not the type that's gonna get caught. He probably would have killed everybody there
I was
when he was
really
storming.
surprised when they overpowered him. I was like, just go ham. Well, then again, he couldn't use his sword. So there was a thing there. But still, I was like, come on. Like, you got everything you need.
Yeah.
While we're talking about that, I should mention
All I needed was a cape, and Batmobile. I am vengeance.
uh, just like I don't know about you guys, but I really liked the oneers and the tracking shots in this movie a lot.
Oh yeah.
I really something that stood out to me about them in particular was, and this is not a slight against these other movies and these other filmmakers, but when you think about big long oneers and tracking shots and stuff, I don't know about you guys, but obviously a few things jump to mind right away. Quran and Children of Men, obviously. Uh, and maybe like in Naruto and some of these other like movies that have had these big long stuff like that. I don't know about you guys, even though those movies have some of the most impressive stuff I've ever seen in them, when it's working, I think it's like mind blowing how good they are. But sometimes, even though they're very, very good, when a shot seems to almost be going too long, sometimes I'm like, oh man, it's very impressive, but I wonder if there isn't a better way to have done this, kind of thing, sometimes.
Yeah.
And with this movie, as soon as I saw that first battle that I was talking about, that was so good, it got to the end of it, and I was like, oh my God, I got to watch that again. And I just like went back right away and started watching it again. I loved how it wasn't all one shot, but it was like 2 or 3.
Yeah.
It was like, he's holding the camera and holding the shot as long as it needs to really help the scene. Like when the one I mentioned before, when the boy is running from the bad guys to save his life and get away, and then he gets to the village and he's got to take a cloak off of a dead woman, to hide and make it look like he's just some old little lady so nobody attacks him. And he's walking, meandering through the villagers and crawling under houses and things like that. And the camera is not cutting at all. It really helps you get that sense of you're stuck there with him. He can't escape, until he does escape. And he's also watching and seeing what plays out. And that's unavoidable too. And so all of that really works. In the battle, there's like this one shot that starts the whole thing. The camera follows them as they breach the walls of the thing. They get up to the top, and then they cut on action as he jumps down off of this big tall thing and takes out a guy on a horse. And it's a really good place to cut, because not only does it not even feel like a cut. It's also probably allowed them to do that shot a lot safer and a lot more awesome. And then you still get another long tracking shot again, just like they did before, where it's just kind of following him as he's just like the Terminator walking through this village. Nothing can stop this guy at all. And it's really well done. And I mean, they really only cut, I think, once or twice in the whole sequence, and it's really effective. But just to me, it kind of stuck out because it's like, in a weird sort of way, I don't know if it's just what he felt was necessary, what he felt was best or whatever, but it just felt interesting to me because I felt like it achieved all the same positive aspects, and it didn't feel the need to just do the entire thing as one massive shot, you know?
Yeah, I actually think that that's a great observation. I mean, I think that Eggers he's not on Spielberg's level yet when it comes to oneers, but I think that he's modeling his oneers off of like a Spielbergian philosophy where it's I mean, some of Spielberg's best oneers are only held for like 1 minute to like 90 seconds. And they're still impressive shots. And you almost get the illusion that it's a oneer because you just missed the cut because it's such a perfectly placed cut.
Yeah.
I mean, this is where I still have to say that the oneer in True Detective season 1.
Oh my God.
It easily has to go down as one of the best oneers ever because that shot is more than 5 minutes long. And I watched it, and I think it's safe to say that I'm a trained eye, and I look for this. You know, like I love oneers. So if there's a good oneer, I'm usually looking at it and looking for it, and so on and so forth. I got through that shot in True Detective, and I'm there with my girlfriend at the time, and I'm like, was that all one shot? Wait, was that all one shot? Like, we go through and watch it like 2 or 3 more times, and like, yeah, no cuts, entirely seamless, and I mean, that's what you should be striving for, whenever you do that, is like the oneer is so appropriate that you just don't even notice it unless you're looking for it. And even if you are looking for it, it's still kind of seamless. Uh, and the Northman, I mean, I actually remember reading some stuff about the Northman, a few reviews actually referring to that battle scene, saying it was all done in one shot. Like, people actually missed the fact that he cut there.
Wow. Yeah. I thought I could be totally wrong. I felt like they might have even hid one too, like one that's not even one that's just hard to see, but there's a part where they pan in front of a black like hut thing,
Yeah.
and it's possible they might have even hidden one there too. I don't really know.
Yeah, but I mean, I think we've come to a point with oneers where if they disguise the cut, you just kind of accept it as like, well, that's still a oneer.
It's still a very impressive thing for sure.
Yeah, but yeah, no, I mean, that visible cut, when after they breached the wall, and then another visible cut that came shortly thereafter. I mean, those were just perfectly timed cuts.
Yeah.
I mean, they held the shots for also that campfire scene with the older guy kind of leading all the soldiers in their kind of ritualistic
directly before.
Yeah, directly before. That was all done in one shot too.
Yeah, I mean, granted, that was only like a 40-second shot, but
I think it was longer than that. But
well, it wasn't a giant battle scene. It was guys around a campfire.
Right. It was a simpler shot, though. I think that a lot of people who haven't had to design a shot like that might actually underestimate how hard that was to actually do.
Yeah.
But
he's using his chanting and his little Viking ritual stuff to like get all of the troops riled up into like a berserker rage.
Yeah. And I think a lesser filmmaker might have just done that in a lot of actually more
Close
rapid
up.
cuts. Yeah,
Yeah.
you know, just like cutting with a beat.
Yeah.
That's so easy whenever you have a scene where somebody's like beating a drum in a rhythm, we're like, okay, well, I'll just cut there, and 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 they're basically setting the rhythm of the cuts for the editor. This time around, I think Eggers probably only gave the editor that one shot and a few takes of that shot to use because he just didn't want that to even show up in the movie where they
That's what
do
I would
like
have done if I was him.
yeah. So yeah,
While we're talking about that scene, though, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I watched this movie alone in my house. Uh, certain ways that you have a lot of energy watching a movie, and certain ways you don't. And I'm sitting there watching this thing. Not to say that I was bored in any way at all. I was just, okay, I get where this movie's going. It's very Hamlet, and I got done eating whatever I was eating at the time, and I'm sitting on the couch and leaning back in the couch, watching this thing, and it cuts to a title card that says many years later, and then it's like the man the scene we just described of him rallying up the berserkers and getting them into a rage, so they're like losing their humanity and turning into these vicious feral creatures that are about to attack at dawn, and they're all covered in wolf skins and stuff like that. They're very much more animal than man at this point. They're howling like beasts. And then it cuts to this beautiful shot of them like just getting to the cresting this little hill as they're about to get to this wooden fortress with like 12 to 15 foot walls. And you can see it's probably good 30 to 40 feet, maybe 50 feet or so is this wall. And this guy calls the alarm because he sees them coming. And this spear gets chucked at the Hamlet guy. And he stands up in the middle of the frame. So now you see that as he casts the wolf skin off, that this is the main guy, catches the spear in his hand, turns around and throws it right back at the guy who threw it at them and kills him. And I just sat up in my seat and was like, nice.
And for the record, both people who chucked spears in that scene were white.
Wow.
What?
This whole movie's about Norse people, for crying out loud, Matt. Yeah, really need that disclaimer. No, it's a truly great battle. It's one of the best scenes I've seen in a movie this year.
Yeah, it really was well done. And also, I would like to say that one thing that I am enjoying about Robert Eggers is he's seemed to firmly have made the transition from digital to film. He's the Lighthouse was shot on film, and the Northman was shot on film, and I mean, you can still see how gorgeous the movie looks, just watching it on streaming. But it is a shame that more people did not see this in theaters. It is just, it's a cinegasm. It's gorgeous. It really is just a feast for the eyes.
And it's also sad that a very large chunk of it I saw on my cell phone because of lack of time. But I did see some of it on my laptop, which is the way I see most movies. But sometimes I watch it on the projector, but it's only certain movies that I watch in the evenings. But yeah, no, I mean, I definitely get a sense that on a big screen, especially, this is once the nice thing about theaters is because you are strapped in. You can't really go anywhere. So it is really an event more so than watching it, at home or on a device. But we have imagination. We get a good sense of the story, of the scope. It's just a slightly different experience for sure, but it doesn't detract, I think, from the appreciation of the movie. It's just a different experience. But
well,
yeah, and I do feel like The Witch would have benefited from being shot on film because that movie was way too clean for how dirty it should have been.
yeah, everything was dirty except for the image.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, one thing that you can appreciate cinematographically in the movie, no matter, well, maybe not on your cell phone, I don't know, but there are a few scenes of like visions, like things that are going on in Hamlet's mind, and they have this kind of like really freaky bokeh in the background, uh, that doesn't look like the rest of the movie, and they actually did that optically. They used these lenses, they're Petsfall lenses that basically is optical technology that's existed since the late 19th century. And recently, some companies have started kind of repurposing that same optical technology that can, in a way that they can be mounted on a lot of modern cameras that aren't, like 8x10 view cameras and everything. And yeah, they actually did that all in camera. So anyway, it's a not so subtle difference, but yeah, I think it's actually more subtle than the deaconizers that they used on the assassination of Jesse James. But
As far as I'm
it's
concerned, the
there.
more they do in camera, the better.
Yeah.
Usually.
So I'm with you on that.
I feel like Viking movies are a very, very, very small subgenre of things. Like there aren't very many of them. It's not like westerns. It's not like, there's probably more pirate movies than there's been Viking movies. And there's like really not that many. Do you guys can you think of any other really good Viking movies that would stand up to this one as like being pretty good?
I guess it's not very common. I mean, there was that show that was pretty popular. But
Yeah. I'm thinking about movies though.
yeah,
I
I
know
don't
that
know.
show was pretty popular, but I mean, because I really like there's an old Kirk Douglas movie called The Vikings. It's really good, very overlooked movie. Um, and I remember being really excited around 2006 or something of this movie with Carl Urban. I think it was called Pathfinder or The Pathfinder or something like that. And then just being
Oh yeah,
severely let down by it. It's a
yeah,
terrible movie. Really good premise, but terrible movie. And so like I remember that one. But there's really very few Viking movies out there.
Yeah,
yeah.
it's
Yeah. Actually, I did see Pathfinder, and yeah, it's not very good, but
Good
um,
premise though.
yeah, one thing that got to me was I remember reading the American Cinematographer article on it, and obviously, most of it is shot outside, and a lot of it's shot during the day,
Yeah.
and they actually talked about this where um apparently the density of the trees was so much that they couldn't actually get a proper exposure even shooting fast tungsten film. It was that dark. No, they couldn't get it. They couldn't get it while using an 85B filter. So there was like this weird filter. I completely forgot about it. Sorry, I forgot about the name of the filter. I haven't read this article in like 12 years.
How dare you, Matt?
how dare you?
But yeah, they found like a partial correction filter that removed less light from the image that just kind of made it workable. But yeah, apparently, even though so much of the movie was day exterior, they couldn't actually get enough light to the film while using correction filters. But yeah,
Jeez.
it's and that's in the era of 500 ISO tungsten film stocks.
Yeah, it was only 15, 16 years ago.
Yeah, so
Huh.
Yeah.
There's a movie that's kind of a Viking movie that I was even going to suggest if we ever get to the point where we're really slow and we can't think of other movies. There's this really silly movie I thought you guys might be interested in watching with Jim Caviezel, just called it's called Outlander. And,
Yeah, it came up here in the suggestions.
Oh,
For
did it?
similar movies.
It's a silly movie, but it's got a great cast. I mean, it's like I think John Hurt is in it and stuff like that. But it's a fun movie. It's like a sci-fi thing where like a guy from another planet in a futuristic spaceship lands in the Viking times, and so it's like a very intelligent, spacefaring individual dealing with Vikings.
Okay. Yeah, I was just about to think, when I think of Jim Caviezel, I don't think, oh, yeah, cast him as a Viking.
Oh, well, he's the spaceman, so
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was
Kanan.
kind of figuring. I mean,
yeah. It's a movie that suffers from its budget because it has a great cast and a fun premise for like a summer action movie kind of thing. But it's when you watch it, you have to forgive the CGI. It's got real sketchy, like early 2000s
Dated.
CGI. Yeah.
yeah.
And then the only other one I was thinking is Eric the Viking, the comedy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of slim pickings. We might actually have to start looking at movies that actually come out of the region. Those from Norway and Sweden and
Yeah, I think I
Denmark.
wonder if I might have seen something, but yeah, there's very few of them for sure. But I have recollection of seeing some stuff related to Vikings, but honestly, I don't even remember if it was animated or maybe it was a show, maybe it wasn't a movie.
If you guys get a chance to watch the Kirk Douglas one, it's pretty good. It's some fun action. It's called The Vikings. Yeah, it's got some fun stuff in it.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? Maybe it was like, I don't know why, but I think it might be like a sketch comedy show that I saw something about Vikings. Maybe that's what it was, like Mitchell and Webb or something. Anyways, but interesting.